Welcome, everyone. Hello, everyone. Welcome in. Happy Monday. How is everybody? Hi, Nicole. How are you? How is everybody today? Hey, Marlene. How are you? How was your Monday? Tell us where you're from. Say hello. Come on in. Today, we're going to talk about shadow work. Oh, good. You're going to get your furnace. That's awesome. Hi, Jennifer. Oh, thank you. Hi, come to bed eyes. You made it again. How's everybody? Hello, Kimberly from Texas. How's Texas? How's everybody? How was your weekend? I got Peaky Bee here, but she's not coming up. So how is everybody? Are you feeling the fall weather coming in? I know it's starting to come in. Yeah, sure. Well, it's fresh. Oh my gosh. How is everybody? Hi, Lola. How's everybody doing this Monday? It's the harvest. We're in the harvest season. It's still hot over there. Wow, that's nice. Hey, Lola. How's it going? How is everybody? Over here, it's starting to get cool, and we're starting to feel fall in the air. How's everybody? Oh, right on time is our star here. Hi, Liberty. How are you? There's Peaky Bee. Our resident cat. Things are good in Mesa, Arizona. Yes, the cooler temperatures are wonderful. Oh, I bet. Especially down there. You had a blah day today, Kimberly. Low energy. Yeah, I know. We had thunderstorms this weekend. It's getting cooler now, though. Wow. All the way in England, huh? Oh, Peaky's here. You know, who was saying they had a blah day? That's like Peaky responding to that energy. She's like, oh no, I had a blah day too, and I'm going to take it out on everybody. Jeez. Hi, April. How are you in Texas? Weather has cooled down some as well. Wow. Yeah, it's getting colder. It's that time of year. I know she's feisty. I know. She's 15. Can you believe it? That's like mid 70s in cat years, and she tells it like it is. That's for sure. It's a perfect way to start our meditation Monday today, because we're going to be talking about shadow work. So as the veils are thinning, as the weather is getting cooler, as we're going through this huge transition, the time of the ancestors, yeah, she's pretty spunky. Yeah, Jennifer, she's very spunky. Her name before I got her was Sassy, right? So she's still sassy. But it's unfortunate because it's kind of goes along with what we're going to talk about today, which is shadow work. It's healing the parts of ourselves that are unresolved and integrating them into the light. And this is the season to dive deep into what it is that is stopping you from your path, what is, like triggering you, igniting you, and how to, peacefully resolve that. Loved your kitty. She's back again, by the way. She's like, I'm not done. Had an unusual experience. Sang to the river, walked away, and burst into tear. Was an energy, no idea. Yeah. Hello, Holistic Phoenix. Right now, the energy is very volatile. It's very intense. It's very fierce. It's just like the cat. very sensitive. It's a sensitive time. And you know how last week we were talking about 9/11 and sort of the energies, and people were asking about the collective energy. Well, today when I was driving and I was thinking about, what is the collective energy right now? If we were to take it down to its baseline level, like the levelest of all levels, I feel like the energy is sadness, it's grief, it's a way of life that is coming to an end. And we talked a little bit about that last week with the change, the shift from the old fire to the new fire, but also from eras. It's a shift of eras, which is a huge monumental shift. It's a shift that we're just starting to begin to go into. It's going to last for the rest of our lives. And it starts now with how to cross the bridge from the old life to the new life. Hello, Kim. You don't think you'll make it through this next season? Oh, I know, Lola. It's a super hard time right now. That's the collective energy. Like if we were to take it down to its base level, and I was talking about last week how it feels like a silent suffering. It's like in the air and it's very thick and it's very dense and things are shifting and changing, but it's almost like people are putting down the hatches and getting ready for the storm to come. And if we prepare and we huddle in and we do our individual work, we make it through this energy, because it's winter's coming, right? Don't know why, but I've been feeling sad last few days. Yeah, come to bed, eyes. It's a sadness in the energy. It's a sad time because it's the ending of an old cycle and the beginning of a new cycle. And as with every old cycle, it's a death. It's also a change of seasons. There's a lot of energy of change and transition, and that's why I call it the shadow time. It's a time where if you're brave enough to go deep down into those shadows and take those sadness out, take all the grief, really process and integrate what it is you're feeling, then it becomes your greatest light. I've got our cat and dog on my bed. Had a me day. Yeah, see, people are me blah. It's a blah thing going on right now, and you don't even have to be having a blah anything. It's just kind of this energy that's in the room. And this Saturday, I just realized, is equinox. That's why we're feeling it. We're feeling the change, we're feeling the shift, we're feeling the grief and the unprocessed parts of self. And see, shadow work requires spiritual healing, but it also requires psychological healing. And the shadow work stems from psychology and Carl Jung, who termed that phrase, right? But I think people misunderstand what it is. What is shadow work? Shadow work is going into those parts of self that we often avoid for healing, to look at it, the triggers that we have, the pain and suffering, the ways that we want to mask things, how we want to hide them, but we can't hide them because they come out in other ways. So, how's that resonating with people? Do other people feel the sadness and the energy in the air? What's it like in your world? I have a few people saying, they've been feeling the blah. And it's not to say like it's good or bad. Let's not judge blah. It just is. It's the energy of change, because here in America, we're going from summer to winter, right? And then there's that fall season. And I was seeing the leaves falling today, and I was like, oh, there's the fall season. It's starting already. And this is the season of really letting go. And I feel like this year is a big letting go, because there's a whole entire change that we're really feeling, and it's just really starting. This is a bad week. I was in a car wreck and got hit Friday. Oh no. Then tomorrow is the 2nd-year anniversary of your mom's death. Oh, I'm sorry. That's a hard time. There's a lot of challenges there. You're feeling the heaviness in the air. In some ways, I'm feeling better after having a very rough time. Couldn't write, writing some now. Good. Yes, I feel it. Yes, I feel the sadness in me. I'm not even aware of what needs processing now. Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah. It's this energy. I think too, around this time, like we've been talking about, the ancestors' veil is very thin. So those of you who are sensitive to energy, you may be seeing or sensing or feeling spirits and spiritual activity because the veils are so thin right now. Same in UK, autumn is here. Yes, autumn is here. It's the season to let go. And we're going to talk about some things about shadow. So who is familiar with shadow work? What do we know about shadow work? What have you done? What do you know? Nightmares have kicked up again. That's shadow. Couldn't sleep last night and had a nightmare. See, 2 people had a nightmare. And my husband having an affair. Woke up at 3:30 a.m. Yeah, 3:30 a.m. is the spiritual hour. That's the time spirit wakes us up. And if you're not able to go back to sleep, so say like you just awaken out of a dream or a nightmare or something and you can't go back to bed, it's a good time to write or process or go outside or do some meditation. But they call that the spirit hour. Like anywhere between 2 to 4 a.m. is the most spiritual time of the day. And is usually when we wake up, it has a meaning beyond what we even think, especially when we can't go back to bed. And like if you're being awoken by a nightmare, there's something to process. There's an unresolved energy to process, right? And what is that? Like trust or insecurity or fear, right? I've been working on it, not sure what to do, not sure what integration means, except integration is exactly like that. It's taking everything you love and everything you hate and putting it together and making it peaceful instead of two opposites fighting each other like they usually do. So what usually happens in our ego structure is that we want the good and push the bad, right? We're always moving towards pleasure and moving away from pain. However, in this lifetime, you're always going to have both. You're going to have pleasure, but you're also going to have pain. So you can't run away from either one. And so the path of what they call enlightenment or integration is the path where you take both and you learn to live in peace and harmony with it, knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses, and loving them both. And that's hard because we're taught from birth like, ooh, this is good, no, that's bad, right? But in true spirituality and in true spiritual growth and integration of the soul, you have to have both because we live in a polarity. We live in a law. There's the law of polarity, and we live in a polarized universe. Let's see what else. I've heard of shadow work. Good. I had a bad dream. Real horrible. Really. Usually don't recall that. I was trying to process it. Fear is also looking at things I'm not proud of in myself. Yes. I am only experiencing extreme pain. Yeah. So the thing about like when we experience the extreme pain, it's kind of getting down to the nitty gritty of what is that pain we're experiencing and what is it really? And that sometimes takes that root work of healing. It's like, what is it that's really under the surface that I'm healing and clearing? And there's usually, it's not all just childhood trauma, but it's also like world. There's an internal, but there's an external factor to suffering. And I think a lot of times we know like, oh, it's individual pain, but like I was talking about earlier, so there's also a collective pain and we're all going through it. And then that's what the empathy and compassion and kindness parts of it are. Because if we know we're suffering and we know another is suffering, then we start to understand that there's a universal suffering, and then we have more kindness and compassion for ourselves and others. Don't know anything about shadow work, but ready to learn. Okay. Does that have to do with spirits? Yeah. Today in the morning while walking, when I got to the end of my property, I could smell like a koan, but it was outside my property. You know, people are going to start having those. Do you have those experiences with spirit where you smell things? That's because the ancestor portal is so active. Like the other day, I was smelling like cigarettes and there was nobody around me. Nobody was smoking. I don't know where that smell was coming from. 7 years of a lot of isolation and connecting with nature and spirits, facing a lot of challenges and learning to be more as myself. That's the spiritual thing, is when you can sit with yourself. And I think, Lola, that's good. You're experiencing pain because it means you're probably denumbing, you're awakening out of something. Awakening, everybody talks about spiritual awakening, but spiritual awakening is actually very painful because you're awakening out of everything you thought you knew into what it is that you really know. I love Songbird because I had a meeting with her and she loved the feisty side of me. I didn't know what the path of integration was called. I want that, please. A way to make it work for society. Yeah, dark energy and the light. I feel like everyone around me suffers so much. Yeah. And it's because people right now are having to face their shadow. And you could call it like a shamanic death. That's what we call it. It's the dying from the inside out to transform. I had that yesterday or day before where I smelled. Now I can't remember, but yeah. And also, like I said earlier, the veil is so thin. There's like many, many layers to this thing because it's the spiritual components, which is unresolved energy from our past, which also includes, our personal past, our past lives, and our ancestral past. So there's like huge past energies we're working with. And then in the present moment, we have to experience it so that we feel it to heal it. And then we come to realization. So this next couple months, it's going to be like spiritual revelations. That's why a lot of you are having the nightmares, because it's subconscious clearing that's ready to come up and be released. And it's from the past. And then we acknowledge it, feel it, process it, integrate it into the present. And then that clears up a future, right? Because right now you're deciding your future. And that's why a lot of people are having problems predicting a future. It's really hard right now if you're psychic or, if you have the gift of prophecies, to predict a future, because it's so depends on how much we integrate the shadow work. And it's, like I said, it's deep past stuff. It's your personal past, which is one layer. And then as you go deeper into shadow work, you go into past lives. And then from past lives, you go into like ancestral stuff, ancestral trauma, historical trauma. You start clearing all these shadows within you that then create a better future. Because if you clear your shadows and you integrate them into the light, and you're now living in a more authentic, whole, way, you're feeling authentically, you're experiencing authentically, you're building a new future, a new reality, a new story. And that's how ancestral healing works. You know how I always talk about 7 generations back and 7 generations forward? It's through the integration of all the parts that probably your ancestors didn't like about themselves, that past life versions of you didn't like about yourself. Because when we get into past life work, which is really fascinating, and we go deeper into who you were in past lives, we'll see patterns. And when you start to understand patterns that you've had in the past that are stopping you in this future, in this present moment, then you can start to heal them. Like some people, it's, being afraid of water, being afraid of heights, being afraid of certain people you'll meet and you'll be like, ooh, and they'll trigger something from a past, right? So right now, it's a really important time to start to really pay attention to what your subconscious is saying in dreams, what your subconscious is saying in signs and synchronicities, and also what is coming up for you to look at in terms of triggers, places that you're like, you know. I had that yesterday. Okay. I could have gone without, and I was a better person before. If I heal myself, will it help my mom who still lives? I worry she will become a hungry ghost. You heal yourself, and what happens is you forgive all the. See, a natural byproduct of healing is forgiveness. You can't force forgiveness. Forgiveness happens as a natural result of healing. And you start to heal that, and then the relationship changes, and you start to have more compassion, empathy, and love for the person. And then their spirit is less likely to be a hungry ghost in the afterlife because they have felt love when they're dying. See, the whole thing about hungry ghosts is that they were unloved people. And that's why when you start to try to talk about clearing and stuff like that, you can't do it from a place of anger, vengefulness, hatred, fear. You can't work with spirits like that, because when you're dealing with a vengeful spirit and then you throw venge on it, it's like throwing alcohol onto a fire. It's just going to make it bigger. But when you throw love, then it's like throwing water. It's going to cool it. It's going to put it out. It's not going to inflame it. That's the last thing you want to do with an angry spirit, is to inflame it. Because when you start inflaming something, you're going to make the problem worse, not better. And that's usually what we do. When we have a trigger, it's like throwing alcohol onto a fire. It's like throwing the fuel onto the fire and making a big bonfire. And that's because, that's how we think we're supposed to deal with it. It's like, but actually the way to deal with stuff like that is not to respond. If somebody's throwing fire at you, the best thing to do is just stay calm and neutral. And then with a person, you're like, especially a parent who you probably have a lot of triggers and a lot of unresolved healing with and a lot of shadow work with, it's best to do the internal healing on yourself and clearing those insecurities and those fears. And then when you work with that person, you understand that they did the best they could. They had their own traumas, their own past stuff that they were dealing with that they probably never have dealt with. And you see it from a bigger perspective. So that's how healing really affects your world, is that it doesn't change that person. That person will probably stay the same. But the way you relate, the way you communicate, and the way you understand that person is what changes. And then you have like forgiveness, right? I love your tapestry. I think, yeah, that's green Tara, and then all the Taras and the enlightened beings behind us. What's going on, Lola? I can love her, but she sees herself as a victim no matter how much she loves. Yeah. See, the problem is that, and this is the hard part of healing, is that the person will never change. The person who hurts us will never change. What changes is us. And that's what the real healing is that most likely they will never change. But how they how they affect us changes. And that's what's beautiful about it, is that we're no longer affected. And then, part of it is you learning self-care, self-love, self-rituals. And sometimes you have to walk away. That's sometimes a reality too. I dreamt about tons of little frogs and a store full of stuffed elephant toys. Oh, that's good. Frogs and elephant toys. Frogs are cleansing. I can love her. Oh, okay. I've just been doing the hungry ghost for people I know who died hard, naming people I love. Yeah, that's good. You do the hungry ghost for the people that you know and love, and the spirits that are probably around your property. Yeah. So yeah, everybody has somebody, right? Everybody has somebody or somebodies they came into this lifetime to work it out with. And there's a lot of components to how we're related to people. I dreamt of a yard of grass and herbs, my yard and neighbors. Oh, that's beautiful. So yeah, that dream world seems to be very active right now. Everybody's having different dreams, and it's important to write them down. Write all the dreams down. Write everything down. We're in a very powerful doorway this next week because Saturday is equinox, and then we have the harvest full moon at the end of the month, and then all next month is October's. It's October, which is the time of the ancestors. And also profound change, profound healing, profound growth is all possible in these next 2 months because we're in the season of change. We're in the season of harvest. It's the time where you really think about what have you been working on? What are you releasing? What are you integrating? And what are you preparing for in your future? And there's a lot of emotions that come with that, depending on what you're going through in your life right now. I love frogs, and the African elephant is my number one animal. Yeah, we all have different lives, but collectively we have a theme of change and transition and healing right now as we go through this shift of change of seasons. Hi, hidden savior, or savior, hidden survivor. How are you? So those are kind of themes that we're working with this next week. And also, where are you ready to step into? Maybe you start thinking about that too. It's still kind of a ways off. See, the thing about it is that fall is the season to let go, to clear the past stuff. And then the winter time is the time to dream a new future. It's the time where you go deeper within yourself and you sit and you retreat, right? Because you have to go inside now more because it's cold out. And you are given that time of the ancestors, and the ancestors come down through the north time or the winter time, and we talk about stories of the old ways and healing ceremonies, and there's a lot of things done in the winter time that are all about visualizing, resting, and creating the next steps. I think one of the hardest things about the time that we're living in is everybody's in a hurry. Like our ancestors, they knew the seasons to do what. They were like, okay, this is this season. So, it's a harvest season. So we get everything ready for the winter time, and we prepare the harvest, and we can, and we make jerky, and we prepare ourselves for winter. And then in winter time, we tell stories, we do healing ceremonies, we go deeper within ourselves, we retreat, we do our shadow work, we understand that we're preparing for spring. And then in springtime, it's the new beginnings. It's everything we've accumulated from the previous to come now into the next season of our life, which is March equinox. So from this equinox to the next equinox is a good time to think about, what am I letting go of now? What am I clearing from my past? And then what am I ready to step into? And then future creations, and then ready to birth something new in the spring. But for a lot of people, that seems like a very long time. but it's really not. It goes very quickly. But when we know the right season to begin something and the right season to end something, it makes life much easier, because we're no different than those cycles of nature. We are nature. We're part of nature. We are born from nature. And so when we return to those natural rhythms and cycles of nature, we're not stressed out. We understand, okay, this is the time to push it forward, but no, this is the time to pull it inward. Is anyone seeing a lot of things in their peripheral vision? April, I think a lot of people are probably seeing a lot of things because it's the veils. The veils are very, very thin right now. And if you see things, if you feel things, and if you know things, you're going to know that there's a lot of energies around us right now. And that's why I emphasize spiritual cleansing and spiritual protection, especially if you're going around groups of people, because the energy is so intense, right? There's this intense energy in the air. And, you know, if we think about it, what makes this season even more powerful is, like I said earlier, the shift of eras. We're going from what we called last week, the agricultural era, to the technological era. Some people call it the fifth dimension. Some people call it the new fire. Some people call it the seventh fire. There's a lot of different words, but it's the same thing. We're going from the old to the new. We're changing seasons. And I think one of the things we haven't really dived too deep into, but is going to become very, very prominent in the years to come, is how technology stirs up the spiritual world. Because the 5G technology and beyond works on a frequency that is powered by the spirits. And when you understand ancient Egyptian technology, like the Ankh and the towers that they had back then, and what Nikola Tesla was talking about, we start to understand what we're also working with is a spiritual thing. The technology is spiritual. And whether we know it or not, most of the things that are happening in our world are to prepare us for this new technology that's about to be released. You know, the whole AI and everything that we're already starting. I mean, think about in 50 years where technology will be, because that's the shift, 52 years. Think about where, you know, AI and all this stuff is going. It's a good time to tap in. It's very easy right now. Yes, those AI paintings. Oh my, it captures the youth. It hypnotizes them and programs them. Yeah, and these children coming in now, and the young ones, they're gonna be in it. You know, they're gonna know that's all they're gonna know is the technology world. And they're born into it. This is their generation, this is their time. Have you ever heard of theory concept known as, oh yeah, I've heard about Tartaria or something. Yeah, the time where the free energy and how that was all burned. The cleansing will be with sage and the salt around the house, right? Yeah, that's some protection. They don't socialize the same. No, they don't. How do you say that? Tartaria. I've read a little bit about that. I don't know too much about that subject, but I have heard about it. Maybe one day we'll dive into that. It's hidden history, yeah. You know, the problem, and I think this is where you know, we have to take more time with stuff, is that there's a lot of stuff coming out now, and we don't know where it's coming from. And so that's why I have to do more research on that, but I have heard about that before. Love, light, and blessings for all you beautiful souls. Oh, hello, Venus. The old world was more advanced than the current world, but it got old. Thank you. Got lost. Oh, got lost. You know, that's the thing. is that we think we're living in this advanced society, but most of their ancient knowledge, even like how they mummified bodies and the whole process, and a lot of that stuff was way more advanced. How they made temples in the jungle that were symmetrically perfect, or pyramids, how were those made? Yeah, there's a lot of mysteries, so we don't know who or what was more advanced. The thing that makes the theory fall apart is when things like imperialism come into play. Yeah. Well, it's like these theories are really great, but they're not founded sometimes on like evidence based, and that's what most people in this time and era, of course, want and need to see is, where's the evidence of this stuff? A lot of people just don't know. We will have to turn back to the old ways. Yeah. What I say about the people who are born during this time, especially if you're born like, in the time where you still went outside as a child, is that people who are like, let's say like, 50s, 60s, I don't know, people who, I would even say like pre-millennial to millennial, that generation is the bridge generation. I forget the generation before that, but like 1970s, maybe even 60s to early 2000s, perhaps even later 2000s, but that generation is what they call the bridges, because you're going to be the last of that generation that went outside, that knew what life was before technology really took over. Because like the first generations of the computer, remember the MacBook computers that were in schools? The very first ones where you still learned cursive, how to cursive write, and you still learned, some of those old things. We're at the very tail end of the old ways. I had a grandmother. Her name in her language meant, catching the tail end of the old ways. And she caught the tail because she was born like late 1800s, like she was in that tail end. So she learned the old ways, but it was at the very end of the old ways. And so, her whole life was about bridging the old to the new. And she was a real pioneer in bringing traditional medicine into hospitals and stuff like that. And she passed away a few years ago, but that was what she taught, was that she came at that time because it was such a critical and important time of our old ways. And we're kind of that generation too, where it's like you're catching the end of a tale. And this is a time where a lot of tales, a lot of things are made up too, because we're at the end of it. And so what's going to end up happening is this tail end is going to have to merge in and become something anew. And that's what the new fire is. It's how to integrate the old with the new, and what's going to come in and what's going to go out, because a lot of things are going to be lost in this time too. Yeah, we will have to turn back to the old ways. Prior to the millennial generation is Gen X. Yeah, Gen X. Gen X is probably yeah, they're a part of that too. You always say Gen X is kind of like that forgotten generation. You know what I mean? I feel like Gen X probably feels that way. They're that forgotten. And then there's like many generations, but the last huge generation we had was the baby boomers, right? And they're coming to their tail end. And then it's going to be like Gen X, millennials coming in. How do you say her name? I don't remember her native name, but her American name was like Rita. She was grandmother Rita, and she was from Alaska. Wow, this hits heavily now, especially since all the G7 nations are suffering badly. That's what I've seen, going back to the old ways with advanced techs. I don't know, the feral generation. Wandering around outside and drinking from hoses. Yeah, that generation where we'd go outside and we knew the power of Mother Earth. Right now, young kids always want to go on the technology. They come home from school, they want to be on technology, or they're at a homeschool, and there's a lot of technology coming up, and that's their whole world. But the generations prior, part of our responsibility to the next generation is to remind them and keep them connected to the earth, because the further we go from the earth, the further we go from ourselves. And that's part of why shadow work is important, because when you integrate those darker parts of yourself into the light, then you have something to give back. Wandering, America's grip on the world is waning, and I wonder who's going to replace the vacuum. My daughter can't find her way anywhere without technology. Yeah, exactly. Hi, Martha. No, they don't know their way without technology. I don't think most people know how to use a map either. They're just, Siri, where's whatever. That's the thing, is that America is going to change, but every country is going to change. And we've been through these changes before. So that's where we have to trust and understand. And the only real GPS is your intuition. It's your ability to know what's right and wrong for you. I can use a map, but I love not having to. Yeah, I know. Yeah, you can cleanse with sage and salt. Yeah, I mean, part of this shadow time is, the TikTok was lagging. I'm sorry. Is it lagging for everybody, or just, that's one thing I don't like about TikTok, is it glitches. But one thing to remember about this time of the shadow and letting things go is how to do that in a graceful way, how to release the things that no longer serve you in a graceful way. A little lag occasionally, but it's okay. It has been glitching. TikTok is good now. Okay. See, on my end is not glitching, but then I don't know on your end. I noticed sometimes if I watch other lives, like it does glitch and it does weird stuff, and I think that's when people usually reset their lives. But let me know if it starts glitching or doing strange things. A lot of people in other countries are standing up for the better. Mm-hmm. I have grace tattooed on my hand to remind me. Yeah. That's a good reminder, is, how to transition and change with grace without being resentful or angry or bitter or mad or upset all the time, or constantly, like we're walking through a landfill, what do you call it? Landmine, where we're gracefully letting go. And I think really what's happening here in the West is we're having to let go of consumerism. That is going to have to die in order for us to be happy. And we're starting to see that now, because as things become more and more expensive and there's less supply and things become different, we have to learn how to rely upon other resources and what do we really need for our happiness. And it's not things. I think the great resignation of 2021 really opened the conversation into work culture. Yeah, no, exactly. I came to that the other day. Yeah, that's the thing too. Is the great resignation was, I don't want to work for pennies. I don't. The whole shift of 2020 is a reevaluation of what is really important to us. What do we really need? What makes us happy? How do we want to live our life? Because life is sacred and it's short, and it's the only thing you take with you when you leave this place is your soul. It's the experiences, it's the memories, it's the legacy that you leave on earth that then when you're long gone continues on, right? But if we're constantly in a state of survival, we can't even think of the future because you're too wrapped up in the past and present. And I think that's the real shadow work that we have to heal on an individual level that will then ripple into the collective. Is if I stepped out of my own personal survival, what is the legacy that I want to leave on this earth? That when I'm gone, it'll still be here. And everybody has a legacy. It could be your family, it could be your child, it could be your children, it could be a business that you do, it could be a nonprofit, it could be just all the people that you loved. You know, everybody has a legacy to leave here. But the problem is that because of the external factors in life, we are mostly concerned with just making it, with just paying the bills, with just, living, right? And that is what I feel like is breaking through now, is people are starting to think like, is this all my life is just working? And what am I working for? Is it worth it? That's really going to come to the forefront in this new fire. A legacy of art and creativity. All right. Just recently, my state fully implemented the wage transparency law. That's great. Colorado was the first to start it all. Yeah, I'm here in Colorado, and I'm so glad that states have a spillover effect. You sometimes think about writing a book. That's you. Yeah, there's a lot of people right now should be writing books. A lot of people right now should be documenting their stories, putting it on, social media, doing videos, telling their perspective, their points of view, what they've lived through, because it's all changing. So imagine the stuff you write about now, and then someone 10 years from now picking it up and being like, wow, I can't believe 10 years ago life was like that. Everybody has a book or something to document. You don't have to be a writer. You could be a storyteller on video, or just telling your friends, your family, that kind of stuff. It would be similar to You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay minus the New Age approach. I make videos of the Hungry Ghost Altar. Oh, good. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, that's why vlogging is so popular, podcasting. Everybody can document something. And then, it becomes living history. It becomes part of your legacy. It becomes part of your story. It becomes part of your expression, your creativity. There's something that everybody has to offer. And it's a good time to start looking at that, thinking about that, clearing those altars those hungry ghosts, you know. It's your idea, but I think of your advice when I do it. That's good. Well, it's not even my idea. It's from who knows how many thousands of years ago and how many generations ago. There's a Korean story that, 2,000 years ago was when, a lot of this stuff happened. So in 2000, so like the way that ancient Asian society was, and even like Japan, they still have an empress and an emperor. But the way that the Asian societies were was that the ancient kings and queens were what we considered enlightened beings. They were enlightened societies. So even still in the language, it's an enlightened language. Even though we are no longer an enlightened society, the language and the culture has those enlightened components weaved in. Unlike English, English is kind of like a hodgepodge of a bunch of different languages, right? But like Korean language, it has a very ancient history, and a lot of that history comes from the royalty. And the royals were considered enlightened. Like they lived in those beautiful palaces and they had this whole enlightened city inside. And so 2,000 years ago was when the society fell apart. It was the last generation of enlightened kings. And it was prophesied that the last generation would happen. And then after that kingdom fell, there would be 2,000 years of suffering. And as it turns out, there has been 2,000 years of suffering because of war and all this stuff. Now, division of North and South. So, all of this was prophesied 2,000 years ago. And they said in 2,000 years' time that the people from the old kingdom, the old enlightened kingdom, would come back to the earth and begin to rebuild the enlightened society. And they believed it was going to happen, like not just in Korea, but all over, that these ancient people would come back and they would, build back, they would bring back those enlightened parts. So part of people's mission who are seeking a spiritual path, who are looking for enlightenment, who feel the calling to join with something greater, is to go back to the enlightened space, which is to be in the light, mind, body, spirit, and integrate your shadow with your light. Integrate your darkness into your light and bring back enlightenment to this world, because it's been gone for at least 2,000 years. Pansori form probably does. That exists in Japan's national anthem known as Kimi ga Yo. Yeah. This thing is like these ancient prophecies are coming back. They're starting to reveal themselves. They're starting to show themselves. And the people who were from those times are starting to come back. That's why there's going to be a huge surge in, people wanting to know their ancestry, their stories, their creation stories, their ways, right? But the unfortunate thing is that, those old ways, a lot of them have died out or at the tail end, right? So it's like you have to piece together all these things. And that's what's happening with all these theories, is that all these theories are emerging because people are trying to piece back things, and it's all in shambles. And the only place you're going to be able to find most of it is by going within. And then by going within and getting the information, then you can go research and you can go look and you can find reliable sources where the tail ends are still existing. It's not that they're completely gone, they're just hidden or mysterious or tucked in places and spaces that you can't get to until you're ready. And that's what they call gatekeeping. That's what actually gatekeeping is. It's not that anybody is like really gatekeeping it. It's that this information, the knowledge is hidden in the spiritual realms, and they will reveal themselves when you're ready, which is divine timing, not when you think you're ready. Because the problem with this modern world, unlike the ancient world, is people don't want to do the hard work to earn esoteric or mystical information. They want it now, like fast food, But actually, to really get spiritual knowledge, spiritual power, spiritual wisdom, you have to be a seeker. You have to seek it. It doesn't just fall in your lap. It comes in like pieces, like a treasure hunt. And, that's what the whole, sacred pipe is about, is that you don't get a sacred pipe until you've earned it. You don't get an eagle feather until you earned it. You don't just get these things. They are earned. And how they're earned is through your pure heart. And then when you have a pure heart, those things are revealed to you in the right time. And so we have to wait for certain things. We have to work for certain things. We don't just get those things. It's like Tai Chi. Not every master is willing to teach just anyone. Yeah, you need to gain their trust. Exactly. That's the medicine path. That's how this path is too. It's not, you're not given things. You have to earn it. That's the native way. Or know one of their students. I was thinking about gatekeepers a lot, but in terms of fiction. Well, gatekeepers keep, like even in angels, like if you work with angels, there's gatekeepers there. In all the spiritual levels, there's gatekeeping. It's like you can't go on to the next level until you've passed this level. Just like video games or anything. Anything that's worth it is a step-by-step process. It's just like school. You can't go from kindergarten to college. You can't, right? Yes, it's step like breadcrumbs. Yes, exactly. It is a lot of steps. I love it. It is a lot of steps, and it's a lot of time, money, and energy usually, because that's what everything in life is. But it's also like something you're destined for, because there's a lot of people that that are not going to do shadow work. They're not going to do spiritual work. They don't care about their ancestry. They don't believe in hungry ghosts. There's so many people that don't, because we live in the West. But why would you believe it? Especially if it's not your culture. You have to think about that. Like, how did that information even find you in this big universe? How did you find that information? And how did you be called to do it? And, what is the path that it led you down? Because when you start doing this type of spiritual work and working on yourself and going against the mainstream, you enter into like the fringe, as I call it, there's a certain way that it came to you. You know what I mean? Yeah. I've never heard about the hungry ghost before. It's not bad. I'm trying. Yeah, so you have to think, Kelly, like, how did that even come into your realm? I'm sure it wasn't something you heard about. You know what I mean? Just how does this information come to you? Like, I think about that all the time. How did I first meet my first teacher? I was just moseying along in my life, going to college. And one thing leads to another thing. Why we got to do all the work? Yeah, I know, blissful. You just think about it. Think about it. Like, how were you, called to your path? How are you called? A hot Instagram topic. You are one of us. Yeah, you never heard of a hungry ghost. How did you hear about a hungry ghost, right? Right? It's like something inside of you knew it. And then it was just revealed to you through TikTok or YouTube or whatever. However you find this information. Would it be ridiculous to say I was inspired by Avatar the Last Airbender? I don't think that's ridiculous. I think a lot of people don't understand that Avatar is the story of America, right? A lot of that was taken from history and from truth, and they put it into a movie. That's where a lot of that stuff comes from, is archetypal, wisdom, psychology, so spiritual, stories, mythology, all that stuff, especially the really good stuff, is always based on truth. But that's how you learn about stuff. Like, unless you're from the culture, like if you come from the hungry ghost culture, you would know about it from childhood because that's what you grew up in. But here in America, unless you're Asian or Buddhist or, otherwise, you would know about it. But most mainstream people in America don't know what a hungry ghost is. They would not even think about that. They would not even acknowledge that. I miss just walking around town, meeting people, and sharing big messages. I'm laughing so hard right now. Pastor Paku's moveset was based off the. Okay. I don't know a whole lot about Tai Chi. I took some in college, but it's like the reason you come across this type of information and you would actually go about trying to do altar work or, hungry ghost offerings or any of the stuff we've talked about is because you were called to it. It's a calling. It's not something you planned for. It's not something that you even thought was possible or you just didn't even know, but it's something inside of you. I was called through very vivid dreams, saw a psychic. She said, "You're a healer," and bam. On a whole new path at 20. I'm 40 now. Yeah, exactly. Blissful. That's the path. It's that you're just going along and the spirit calls you. A dream. The same for Nicole. It's just something happens that changes your whole life. You have that life-changing moment. And when you have that life-changing moment, you can't go back. It's like trying to push the snooze button, but the spirit just gets stronger and stronger. Is it possible to relate to a song so much you feel like it foreshadowed your life? Yeah, it's very possible. Songs have that universal ability to touch the heart. Music is a universal language because it doesn't matter what country you live in, what culture you're from, what your religious ideology is, what your class status is. Like, none of that matters in music because music is a universal language. Everybody who understands music can read music and play music if you're a musician. So music can touch the heart. Even like songs you don't understand the words, but there's something about the melody or there's something about that energy of that song that can pull you into a whole nother dimension, a whole nother frequency, a whole nother energy. Putting the video to song was my favorite part of the Hungry Ghost video. For me, it was titled East Asia. I don't think I've heard of that song. What do you do when you feel a little overwhelmed with inputs from spirit? If you're feeling overwhelmed by spirits, then you can tell them to stop. because first and foremost, you have to understand what spirits you're talking to and communicating. And helpful spirits, the benevolent spirits, enlightened spirits, they don't ever overwhelm you. They won't ever overwhelm you. They don't talk your ear off. They only speak through signs, synchronicities, and universal law. So they will respect your free will. You could be heading down, the bridge of destruction. They know you're going. They're like, okay, stop. You're on the wrong path. You're on the wrong path. You're on the wrong path. And they'll do everything in their power to try to get you to get off that bridge of destruction. But because you have free will and free choice, you can choose to go on that bridge. Now, hopefully, you'll be stopped at some point. But that's the hardest part, probably, in the spirit realms. Can you imagine your spiritual guides, your ancestors, all your benevolent ancestors and enlightened beings who are watching you, and they're like, don't go down the bridge of destruction, and you just keep going. But they can't do anything. It's like in life too, you watch people you love self-destruct, and sometimes there's nothing you can do. You just have to let them self-destruct. That's the hardest thing. 5 months ago today, I kept waiting up like last night, but I was chanting while sleeping. When I woke up, I was chanting, but it was an unknown language to me. I can't remember who I was dreaming. Yeah, that's the thing, is in the dream world, you can speak multiple languages. Who knows how many languages we speak and know in our subconscious minds. Hello, Sonia. How are you doing today? Yeah. So are there any other questions on shadow work? I kind of went all over with it. I know it's not like a happy topic. But I don't feel like right now is really a happy time. Really and truly. If you feel into the energies of the world, it's a transition time. It's a time of change. It's a time where we're preparing for the next shift, which is equinox on the 23rd. So it's a quieter time. It's it's a personal time. It's a time where we should be reflecting on who we are, where we've been, where we're going, and what do we want going forward. How do you personally love your shadows? That's a good question, Mega. It does take a lot of time and energy, right? And forgiveness for self to love those shadows. Because I think it's really easy to point out the shadows in other people and really hard to actually sit and look at your own shadows. I think that's one of the hardest things for us, because we're constantly avoiding the parts of ourselves that we don't like. And that's why, when you start taking away consumerism, you start taking away like entertainment and fun and all that kind of stuff, and you strip it down to the bare bones of what you're really feeling, and first and foremost acknowledging what you're feeling, then it makes integration of the shadow easier, because you at least know what you're working with. And like I pointed out at the beginning of today's live is, first looking at sadness, grief, depression, anxiety, those surface layer emotions that we allow ourselves to feel that are actually masking deeper problems within. And how we first identify our shadows is to look at what is our problem, where are we struggling, what are we suffering with. And by acknowledging and feeling those things, we begin the healing process of going deeper within the pain that we're running away from. And who knows how long people have been running away from pain. Another way people often mask it is through drugs and alcohol. I caught myself staying isolated instead of starting to surface. I think so. I think a lot of people are isolating right now to go deeper within. I see my shadows. Harder for me to see the good. I beat myself up. That's the hardest part. I think that's the hardest part of shadow work is not to get stuck in it. Not to get stuck in the bad because we have a lot of guilt and shame. See, in ceremony work, we always say guilt and shame are the guardians of the subconscious. And when we have a lot of guilt and shame, we can't move beyond it. And so, in order to move beyond guilt and shame, it's to first understand we did nothing wrong. We were acting out of pain, out of resentment, out of bitterness, out of suffering. And because of that, it clouded our ability to see right and wrong. And when we can forgive ourselves and move beyond guilt and shame, we start the healing process. And for some people, healing process is a day, depending on the pain. But for some people, it could be months or years, depending on what it is. And we have to acknowledge the time. And there's never a getting over something. It's only integrating it and accepting it and forgiving it. Oh, I love the song Arirang. Arirang is one of those universal songs. People from any language, any culture can feel the power of that song. I watched a lot of Brene Brown to learn about guilt and shame. Yeah, she's a really good one. She talks a lot about that. I've known my shadow for a while. Sometimes I let it consume me like I'm a taco and I listen. Yeah. At least you're acknowledging it and you're aware of it. That's the first step. And then, listening to it instead of pushing it away. Because when we push away our shadow, it only gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. My favorite version of it is the Northern because of the intro, yeah. The North really, that's the thing about that song is that the North and the South love that song. And now to define authentic self. Oh, and how to define authentic self. That's a good question, Kelly. The authentic self is the self that is healed. That also means whole. And when I mean whole, I mean a person who knows thyself. It's not a perfect person because nobody's perfect. It's a person who acknowledges, accepts, and knows thyself from the inside out. So somebody who is authentic is true to self from the inside out, not from the outside in. You know how most people think they change the outside, they change the inside? It's not true. You have to change the inside to change the outside. And so when you are authentically yourself, you acknowledge all your emotions, all your feelings, all your values, all your ethics, everything you know to be true within yourself, and you don't stray from that. You don't change yourself according to the wind, right? Like if you know yourself, you're like a tree and you're planted where you are. Even the winds blow in, there's this, and that, but you're just planted there because you know yourself. You know your roots and you know the tops of yourself. You know your limbs, you know your leaves, you know your stems, you know everything about yourself because you're rooted. You're rooted. And part of that is also knowing your ancestors, your culture, the good, the bad, the right, the wrong, like everything. And loving both parts. Because, like here in America, we have people from all different types of lineages that have mixed together. You have royalty with, this other not royalty. You've got all this stuff mixed together. So inside of almost every American is some kind of mix. And they're good mixes and not so good mixes. There's a lot of things that happened in our historical past that we're still healing from, but it's accepting that too. It's accepting the good, bad, right, wrong, and being strong in it. You know what I mean? You like that a lot. Thank you. You're welcome. It's shadow work is ongoing. It's not, oh, I did my shadow work today. Because it's like an onion. It peels itself, it reveals itself. And then every time you go through a big shadow work, you come out the other end with more revelation, more aha, more, oh, now I know this about myself. And then it clears a space within yourself to expand and grow like the tree. Every time you go deeper into your roots, you do ancestor work, you do altar work, you do the hungry ghost work, every time you do those things, you're rooting yourself. You're going deeper into the earth of who you are. And at the same time, you're creating new branches that reach towards the heavens that are then your future. That's the way you have to think about this type of work, is that you're not only going down, but you're going up. And that's the shamanic way. It's through all the worlds that we transcend. I loved when you talked about the snake shedding skin too. Yeah, it's the same process. It's a shedding time. Right now, it's the time of renewal. It's the time of letting go. It's the time of, reflection and going deeper in and connecting the spiritual realms and subconscious and understanding the depth, and most people, especially if you're the one doing this work, you might find it lonely. You might find the path lonely because most of the world is not concentrated on transformation. And that's why it's special when you join in on lives like this, because the people who are here are all in that vibration. You know what I mean? Most people are just looking for entertainment or, you know, you know what I mean? Like you could be on a million different lives right now that are 100% more entertaining, more fascinating, more, glitzy, more glamorous, more this, more that. But you choose to stick around here because you're somebody who wants to go deeper into yourself and transformation and removing the pain and suffering from your life and being a tree. Because think of a tree too. A tree is where hundreds, if not thousands of birds will come, and squirrels and insects. I mean, trees, that's the saddest thing about trees, is that when you cut a tree down, you're cutting a resource for so many thousands of lives, and people don't even care. There's the ants, there's the bees, there's the birds, there's, all the different lives, lizards, snakes, who knows what is in that tree. And when they cut it down, the whole entire forest cries because there went someone's home, right? And it was cut down for toilet paper or something stupid a lot of times. This life is the bomb. Oh, thanks, Mega Ultra. Since childhood, but as an adult, I learned that I didn't need others' approval. That is awesome in Survivor. I think we all need to know that. You don't need anybody's approval. I love your talks. You always bring out the real info, and I'm trying to become enlightened. Oh, good, Kim. See, that's the thing. I felt like crying when my neighbors cut their tree. I know. It's devastating when a tree goes down. I had a tree behind my house, and it was like a very old juniper tree. It's probably over 500 years old. And the guy cut it down. And I was so sad because that was my favorite tree. And, all the birds cried. It was such a devastating experience. And when I told him, I can't believe you did that, he said, oh, I'm sorry. I know I didn't want to cut that tree down, but I had to put a septic tank in. Oh, then I was really upset. I was like, now I can see right into their house. That will bring tears to your eyes. I know. I've had that happen too. Peaky B's favorite tree was cut down at one of our residences, and I'll never forget that day. She was looking outside the window like, where'd my tree go? And that's the thing, is that's That's the underdog, the trees, because the tree speaks in a language that is so advanced. It's so, it's a different frequency, it's a different level, but they speak, and they have been here forever. It's like some of those trees are hundreds and not thousands of years old, and they're cut down, and that's like, an elder died. It's like a very ancient elder died. That's super sad. My mother never understood why I was different because no one in our family studies social science. That is devastating. I was ready to fight my neighbor over my tree. I know. I miss an old house with a tree my part wolf dog climbed on. Yeah, people who are very connected to the earth, that's what I was talking about earlier, is where the bridges, because when you have no connection to the earth, imagine what will happen to the earth. And if we continue to destroy the earth at the rate that we're destroying her, where will the future generations live? That's the whole thing about this time we're living in. And that's why it's more important than ever that people do the internal work and clear the shadows. And the biggest shadow that we're facing is greed and selfishness. And it's like, how far down the rabbit hole do we have to go for us to wake up out of this false illusion? Oh, the tree was gone when you visited your old home. Oh, that's devastating. I hate when that happens. There's a big tree next to my old house and it used to bloom. See, when I start talking about the trees, everybody has a tree story. Most people have a tree story. There used to be a big, beautiful tree between my house and the neighbor's house. She chopped it down. That's the thing. It's amazing to me because when I shared my tree story, I had hundreds of comments about people experiencing that very same thing that happened to me with my tree. And they were thanking me for talking about the tree because they had unresolved grief around a tree. What kind of life will anyone actually have? That's the whole mystery, is what kind of life are we creating? During the fall, these little spike balls things used to fall from it. And the birds used to come help the seeds down. My trees are my babies. My older mate asks about my babies. That's why you're here. So a lot of people think that their mission, their purpose, their destiny has to be like glitzy and glamorous and money and all that. But a lot of people's destiny and legacy at this time is about talking about these things, like how beautiful, how sacred, how special the trees are, the bees are, the animals are, wildlife. There's a lot of wildlife right now that's going extinct. They don't have a home because we're consuming their home, or we're planting weeds all over the earth because we think it's a consumer thing. It's consumerism and a greed and selfishness and all that stuff that we're here to bring enlightenment to, and awareness to, and to heal within ourselves. I remember the first time the tree started speaking to me, it was so beautiful. I know, when you can hear a tree, it's the most amazing thing. I imprint on everything I take care of. I connect with them. They are mine and I am theirs. Yeah, that's that connection. And I think when you think about shadow work, one of the ways you can really do deep shadow work is by getting on the earth and just being grateful and acknowledging that in nature, she accepts death and life. Like when you're in nature, you will see a dead tree next to a living tree, and it's like no different, right? They're right next to each other, the old and the new, death and life. And then you see the babies even. I'm ready to move out of the concrete jungle. I miss connecting with nature daily. Yeah. It's super hard in a city. I agree with that, April. A lot of companies engage in greenwashing and a lot of people fall for it. Yeah, I think the thing with the whole green thing is it's not necessarily a better option either, because of all the lithium and whatnot and where they're mining, because now they're trying to mine in South Dakota in the Black Hills, which are sacred to the Lakota. And, it's like, what is the end? You just look at almost every industry and we think, like, what is really the best alternatives? How do we best use our resources on Mother Earth without destroying everything? I felt like a conductor when I was with my trees. Like the electric cars. They are not cleaning up after the mine and the toxic waste is leaking the water in them. What scares me about those is, unlike gas-powered electric, needs a lot more water to put out. I will gladly have a horse again. Yeah. I think, the horsepower, we could go, I'll be Amish. There's some kind of balance, and we're creating it right now. Hybrid cars. It could be hybrid, it could be electric. I don't know. We're in this time where we may be the last generation to know gas. You know what I mean? We might be. I don't know. Anyways, everybody, I'm gonna go ahead and jump off today's live. But this Saturday, we're heading into our equinox, and so I invite you to, if you get on my newsletter, which you can look at my bio and do all that. Get on my newsletter, because I'm going to send out the next newsletter this Friday, Saturday. And so I'll be back next Monday. You're welcome. And until we meet again, many blessings.